being in education as long as you have and educated in education, what are some of the challenges that you are seeing out there in the field with our youth? Some things that we may not even know or be aware of.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome question. This topic is one that I'm very, very passionate about. Post-COVID, and if we're specifically looking at Black children, children of color, epic learning loss. You had families who were in their homes for up to a year, who may or may not have had adequate technology, adequate resources at home, and that definitely played a toll on our babies. Now those kids are, 4 years later, still playing catch up. Meanwhile, you are seeing teachers and administrators leave the field in droves because of burnout and stress. So there are shortages in school districts across the country. And then you see chronic absenteeism from kids too, because if I don't have food or clothes or what I deem to be adequate food or clothing, I may or may not come to school. If I'm having to work to help support my family, I may or may not come to school. If I'm dealing with learning loss and I'm embarrassed because I'm behind, I may or may not come to school. So we're seeing kids who are chronically absent, and that just increases that academic divide. For our Black babies, historically, disproportionate discipline. So you have kids returning to the classroom. I always think about the fact that you think about during COVID, you had a child in kinder who didn't have that natural progression to first grade. You had that child in fifth grade that didn't have that natural progression to middle school. So they're a little younger, that ninth grader who didn't have that natural progression to high school. So mentally, they're a little younger. They're going to show up in middle school and high school, maybe with the same mentality that they would have in elementary or middle. Wow. That could create some discipline issues.
Absolutely.
Our babies are already historically marred by disproportionate discipline. Black boys dating back to the 70s.
Oh, yeah.
So those are some of the issues that I see in the industry and some of the things that my organization and the boards that I sit on are working to correct.
You said a lot, Dr. Tiff.
She said a lot, and you hit a lot of high points.
You sure did.
One in particular, there's a couple I want to address, but one in particular, you talked about teachers leaving in droves. My wife was one of those teachers. I know as her husband, I had to ask her to step down. I had to ask her to leave her job because of the toll it was taking on her body and her mind and her quality of life. Mm-hmm. And I asked her, you can't do this anymore. It's hurting you more than it's helping. And so can you talk to Dr. Tiff about your process and what you had to go through to get to the point of you leaving?
It was a very difficult process because being an educator was one of those dreams that I wanted to fulfill, and I wanted to stick with it until retirement. That was the idea or the mindset behind it. But what I started noticing was that I was carrying so much of the issues and the problems and not having the support at times that I needed, being overtasked because our administrators were being overtasked. So of course it trickled down. And all of these high lofty goals and expectations of the district saying, well, you have to meet these numbers, and viewing kids as numbers and scores versus the beautiful humans that they are. So it started taking its toll on me, and it was a very tough decision, lots of prayer, lots of talks that we had, but I started seeing that, not that I wanted to not help or assist with the education system at all, but I think I was working from a wrong angle. So I'm tutoring right now, kids for reading, and I'm enjoying it and really helping to build that with them. And not only that, really wanting to help support families, because I think one of the frustrations being like a life coach was you have the structure, you have all of these things in place, set up on campus, in the classroom and throughout school. And then if they go home to rules that are non-existent, or they go home to environments that are not conducive for what we're trying to set forth, then it was just very frustrating.
Similar story, Chantel. As you know, I was a school district administrator for many, many, many years. And I left during COVID as well. We were working 18, 20-hour days. We were having Zoom calls at 9, 10, 11 o'clock at night. I was delivering with some of my friends in the city's education departments and other nonprofit leaders. We were delivering food on doorsteps for families who had COVID. Going to local restaurants, looking for dry goods for kids who had COVID. At the time, I was leading a department called Family and Community Engagement, and we had a lot of families in need. That really started to take a toll on my mental and physical health as well. And I had to make a decision. And as much as it hurt to walk away from a job that, if I'm being honest, my identity was wrapped up in my role. I had given my life to the job, and I loved what I did, but I needed to be here for my parents.
There you go.
I needed to be here to fulfill the other things that God had put in me to do. And I couldn't do that working those types of hours under that type of stress. So I understand why teachers and administrators are leaving the profession. And really, there's a responsibility that, our government plays and legislators play in making sure that teachers are adequately compensated, making sure that schools have the resources that they need. And we just don't do a good job there. We don't.
I agree, my dear. And I'm so proud of you for having the courage
I'm very proud of you
take care of you and to make sure that, because if we don't take care of ourselves, how effective are we truly in taking care of others? And even, like you said, fulfilling what God has put in us to do if we're not well enough to do that.
Yep. And putting aside the pride and ego, is at some point you got to just say enough is enough and be honest about where you're at. So very proud of you because of that.
Thank you. It was a scary place, but when you take a leap of faith that way, all the things that happened after that have just been the blessing. And that is the reason why I had to do it. I wouldn't be able to do the things that I do now had I still been working that job. And that's the truth.